And I'm very pleased to introduce the director, Noah Baumbach, please. Nice to see you. Adam Driver. Laura Dern. Ray Liotta. Alan Alda. Producer David Heyman, and I believe the wonderful Scarlett is joining us later.
She's in traffic.
She's in New York, so of course she's in traffic. Or maybe she really wants her own special entrance. You can sit, yes. Ray can always sit first, because, you know, you're the king.
Now I'm the oldest.
I'm just going to ask a few questions to start. I'm going to start with Noah, and then we're going to bring everyone into the conversation. Maybe we'll wait until Scarlett joins us, because what if we say really, really interesting things, and then we have to fill her in later on? And then we can open it up to the audience. I believe it might be the only Q&A you're doing for the film in New York, because you're flying tonight, so... I allowed...
So let's make it count. Yeah.
No, I know. No, I did allow like 136 minutes of discussion, so to make sure.
We'll give you what you need.
I need a lot. So it's not the first time you've tackled the study of divorce in your film. Everybody can think of The Squid and the Whale, which was more focused on the teenagers and the children's point of view, and this is a very heartbreaking and moving story, but more from the point of view of the parents and the grown-ups. So can you decide at what point you wanted to continue in the vein of tragic divorce film, and what made you start writing this one specifically?
Well, I think I was, for a while I've been thinking about writing and making a love story, and I was sort of trying to figure out what that would be, like how to tell a love story in a different way, or in a way that I felt I could kind of organically get into it, and you know, and I think Squid was about divorce on one hand, but it was also about it was a coming of age story. It was about children and parents and moving away from parents. I mean, I really thought of it as a movie about family, which I think about this one as well, you know, and it's told sort of in the cloak of divorce, and of course it is about divorce in many ways, but I was really focused on the love story of it, and in some ways in exploring how, in one way, when something isn't working, you kind of see it in a different way, or in a more clear-eyed way, and that was sort of that. In that way, in looking at divorce, I could explore marriage.
It is a beautiful love story, and it's very tender, and it's hard to focus on the love between two characters so deeply, and make you want to cry often. But no, you're a very well-known cinephile, and we've talked about movies many times, and you come here to discuss your film a lot. There's a lot of obvious references in that film outside of your own world and your own voices. I mean, it's very Bergman-esque in a way, Scenes from a Marriage. So, do you have any specific other reference that you would like to share with us in terms of what you were thinking?
Well, what I also discovered in the material, that it had all these hidden genres kind of baked into it. That there was, I mean, the scene where they're serving or attempting to serve Charlie was both absurd and horrifying at the same time. I thought it was a thriller and it was a screwball comedy. So, you know, I looked at, you know, I love Ernst Lubitsch movies. I looked at a lot of screwball comedies. I love the in a way, Robbie Ryan, who shot the movie, we almost designed it, and in a way they almost, because they're actors, Nicole and her mom and Cassie, in some kind of unconscious way, they probably feel like they're in that movie too, you know, But then it's also like a Hitchcock movie. It's like a bomb that's hidden under the table that we all know is there, and we're waiting for it to go off. So I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to lighten up the scene deliberately or darken the scene. It was all there, and I felt that in the material, as I explored it, it didn't need anything else. You kind of could just follow it. I mean, Bergman, you mentioned Bergman. I actually looked at persona a lot because of the faces and the framing of faces, and I knew I wanted to do a lot of close-ups in the movie, but also show people in relation to each other in rooms, and that movie is, I mean, I think it's as close to a perfect movie as there is, and it's just the framing, the duality. I mean, in a way, a marriage is also they're versions of each other in the marriage, you know, but they're breaking apart. In persona, maybe they're merging, but and the environment too, people in their environments, and I think that movie has all of that in it. So Robbie and I looked at that a lot. We shot the movie in 1:6:6 also, which I think is it's a little more narrow than 1:8:5. The people know aspect ratio, but because of the portraiture, I thought it would frame the faces better, and what faces, you know.
I'm going to ask one last question for you, and that's not his face, that's his leg.
Well, he's good legs too.
And hopefully Scarlett will join by. Can you talk a little bit more about the cinematography? I mean, you shot on 35, which is one of your favorite formats of working on and projection also. And it's the first time you work with Robbie?
Second time, we shot Meyerowitz
Oh,
together,
yes, of course, yeah. It seems like you're exploring also a different way of creating a visual world. Also the interiors were like pretty striking, and you have more like wide and angles and crazy things. So can you elaborate a little bit more on like the visual identity of the film?
I will elaborate on the visual identity of the film, but I'd like to introduce Scarlett Johansson.
Thank you.
Hi. Scarlett.
Hey! Oh, sorry. Oh, so pardon me.
I have to go now.
Hi.
We were very excited that you were coming.
I'm very excited that I'm here.
We were waiting for you to ask more questions, but maybe you want just to.
Well,
or
yeah. Well, there were obviously, many things we thought about, but by necessity in the story, there are a lot of rooms, a lot of conference rooms. It's a lot of spaces in transition. We thought a lot about sort of the notion of home, and you know, and then being out, you know, not home, between home, and so, you know, how would we shoot these spaces? And so that's, like you say, those wide angles, I think there's something kind of menacing about those rooms, you know, office spaces. They're so, on one hand, innocuous, but I thought we could also kind of find something else in there. You know, but the real thing that we focused on was point of view too, and you know, because Nicole and Charlie are in one or the other or both are in every scene, so it's always from their point of view. It's never, you know, even when they're in the mediation and talking, and Bert and Nora are talking, we're always over their shoulders. It's always over Scarlett's or Adam's shoulder. We're never shifting to the lawyers' points of view. They're people that they're meeting along the way. I mean, we kind of almost thought of it like a picaresque journey, like they start at home and then they have to go and transition to this other place. And these are the kind of amazing, strange people they meet along the way.
It's a Greek tragedy. Since we have this amazing cast here, I would like to bring them into the conversation.
They're fine.
I saw some hugging, so I'm sure they're fine. But you do have like a pretty incredible like history of American cinema on stage, because that goes from the universe of Woody Allen and Scorsese and David Lynch and Star Wars and Sofia Coppola and of course MASH, which is the American story if ever. So it's kind of pretty impressive. So when you are a really great writer and you're very precise in your writing and you write, I wouldn't say mean, but flawed character. They're subtle, but they're flawed to the point of sometimes nearly unbearable. So I'm sure it's challenging as an actor to play something like this.
I don't see it that way. I don't see it that way.
But I know it's about you, but maybe they want to mention a little bit what's attractive for them.
No, it's about them. I mean, this movie, the way they give themselves to these characters is, I find so personal. I can watch them in a way I can't watch other movies of mine. I can watch this movie because of what they're doing. I find I'm watching their movie a lot of the time and not mine.
So do they change anything just physically in the gesturing, or is it exactly what you had in mind when you're making the film, when you're
Still
writing?
talking to me.
Well, I mean,
they'll
come in.
Well, I mean, Adam once described acting as a kind of benign rebellion, and I think that's a great way to think about it because, I'm precise. We do the lines of the script. I like to do a lot of takes, but what I'm looking for is that rebellion, is them pushing back in ways, them finding their own voice and I think it gives actors more freedom. I hope it does. For me, it does. As a director, to have structure. I mean, all those scenes are blocked and very precisely mapped out, but there's total freedom for them within that. And you see it, you feel it in the movie.
So should we start maybe with Scarlett? Can you talk about working on this film when, it's something when you saw the script, what attracted you to that intense woman who's going through heartbreak, and how would you create your role to come alive?
That's a lot of questions, but I guess, well, I thought I'd seen the whole script, but I didn't see the whole script because Noah was writing it when we first started seriously talking about it. And I think, maybe you already touched on this, but I think probably part of your process was writing it with us maybe in mind, because that seems very much like when Noah and I were first talking, it was sort of my kind of commitment to it, I think, was the way that we were going to move forward together, and he would move forward writing it in that way.
They were very much a part of, I went to Adam and Scarlett and Laura, too, before I wrote it. And so it was our conversations, all of us, that found their way into the movie, and it also just knowing it was them, thinking of them, saying, doing it. I wouldn't have written this script if I didn't have that guide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think the first thing that I had gotten was I don't know if it may have been word for word, but maybe it was just a draft that you were working on, but it was the story, Nicole's story, that she tells to Laura's character, and it was it was her story, or the way she. It was her story, and I think it would be, I don't know any actor that would get those sides and then just be, not. Anyway, there was no question after that. After I read those sides, I was like, well, yeah. I'll see you on set, I guess. But it was just a very. I think that everyone went into doing this project, all the actors and everyone involved, nobody had any ego about it. It just came from I think you have to be in a safe, comfortable place where you don't feel judged by your fellow actors or your director and you can, you know, be embarrassing and ugly and, you know, vulnerable or what you perceive to be ugly, I guess, and be able to go to all those places and that's when you discover all, you know, all the stuff that you see on the screen is when you have this kind of even playing field between all the people involved. So I just got very incredibly lucky that way to be cast with this incredible cast of actors and be working with Noah and feel like we could like there was nothing wrong. There was no where you went was a wrong place. It was just a means to get to some other thing, and that's why I think there's such a fluidity to the film and the scenes.
Fluidity is a perfect word for this. Maybe Adam would like to talk about his part in the film. It's the second time you've worked with Noah.
No, it's the
Fourth
time
time.
he's worked.
It's early morning. Can you talk a little bit about working with Noah in that specific film and then interacting with Scarlett? I mean, I think if I want to make it more precise, you started with heavy scene when you didn't shoot chronologically in terms of the story. So you started with heavy emotional scene.
You mean when we shot the movie?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We didn't shoot chronologically, but we shot Los Angeles in a chunk, and then we shot New York. But are you asking what scene we started with? Or,
yeah, and then if Adam can continue with like the interaction with Scarlett.
You're asking me what scene we started with?
If you want, yes.
I don't remember. Yeah.
But when you started working, did you start with a breakup? You don't start with the love story. Is it harder to play or like just going?
We rehearsed also, so we all went through it. So by the time we're shooting, things had been blocked. We all sort of had gone through it. So, you know, which I find you have to do in a movie because you go out of order. But you could talk about what you were saying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's hard for me to say which one is more emotional or less emotional because you're not thinking of that. I think sometimes in movies there's a scene that scares you that you know is coming up on the schedule. You know, it's either at the end or it's too soon, or you feel like you don't really have your sense of what you're doing or what you should be wearing or how you should be walking, or just sometimes you find it before you start, sometimes you're already 2 weeks in and then you have an idea about where it is, or there's just a scene that seems unlike the others, and it's, you know, whether it be more emotionally complex or physically complex or, you know, something that's exhausting. But for this movie, I felt every day was one of those scenes, which was a testament to good writing, that the stakes were high and everything. I'm like, oh, well, Halloween is this week? Like, I don't understand it yet. I don't think we have a good report. Or the breakup is now. They're getting served. That's too soon. Like we haven't. So every day it felt like a major event. So it's hard to say what, you know, where they all felt like too soon in the schedule, and they all felt more emotional than I think even scenes that seemed pretty innocuous. You know, reading the text, reading just the script was. It's beautiful, but then when you really have to say say it and mean it, then it took, you know, even scenes that I thought wouldn't be as difficult, you know, when you have to look at it, take Azhy, you know, into consideration. You're looking at his face, who plays my son in the movie, or Alan, you know, or Ray, you know, or Scarlett, and then suddenly it's, you know, obviously it takes a life that's, you know, happening in front of you as opposed to, you know, a document that you're imagining what it's going to be like. So they were all emotionally challenging, I guess, in that way.
And maybe we can ask a question to Laura, Ray, and Alan, because you played a wide range of lawyers. You have short scenes, but they're a great counterbalance to the drama in the film, also because you bring a layer of like humor and reality. So how did you manage to like create like such fierce character and memorable character in so little time in a way?
Those scenes are quite long, actually.
Well, very long, but I mean in terms of the life of the characters on screen, it's shorter.
But you were more memorable.
Alan, you go.
You know, sorry. The experience of reading the script that Noah wrote, combined with the way he worked on the set, and the actors that he assembled to play this picture, was such an ideal dream combination that all you had to do was fit in with it. The thing that impressed me so much, I think one of the moments that impressed me so much about the movie was a moment near the end where Scarlett and Adam don't say anything, they just look at each other. And I swear to God, I could read their thoughts. And I think at that moment, everybody in the audience is thinking the same thing. Now you say that, now, you know, it comes, but that key moment is expressed not through fancy acting or music or dialogue or witty sayings. It's expressed through the presence of the people who are really in their imaginary life going through a real situation that you believe happened on Earth somewhere. And that's extraordinary to be in that experience along with them, and I'm so happy to have been able to do it. Now it's your turn.
Oh, me? Yeah. What's the question?
How we felt being the lawyers.
The question is, didn't you think I was great in the movie?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say, so on to Laura. No, it was just, look, it's all about the script. Everything you do, it's about the writing. And it was just so good that all you have to do is just submit to it, just say it. And obviously the writing was it's just great. So, that's it.
It works. And Laura?
I would just add, as Scarlett was saying, you know, the luxury of this experience, to me, unlike any other, is that I always dreamt from loving Noah's work and his films that he might be the kind of filmmaker an actor dreams of that creates a company, and that the experience would feel much like breaking open a play and being invited into the playwright's experience. And I loved that through not only the process of dinners and talking through this love story he wanted to build, but also in the process of costume fittings and all of us finding each other in rehearsal in different groupings, that we weren't isolated to our character or to our part of the movie. We were allowed to feel the breath through the film and what the narrative was he wanted to tell by experiencing each other's job at hand. And that I don't see in film, and I think it speaks to us all being part of the same organism somehow. Like, that's gorgeous to me, just that the process is taken with such consideration and depth and truth. So that's, you know, unlike any other experience. And just in terms of us as three lawyers, I don't know how he utilized each of these characters to sort of summarize the experience of a person being invited in to the most precious and devastating moment you could imagine in a love story. And you pay them to have them tell you what your life is and what you want for yourself. And each of them do it in such an unbelievably different way that it just speaks to genius writing and an amazing opportunity for the three of us to to play in these different worlds. So I feel very blessed to be part of it too.
Thank you. We can take questions from the audience. We have a microphone? Yes? No? Yes, there's a microphone, so there's someone here, please.
Hi, I just wanted to ask you about your very just beautifully specific choice to include company. And both of you sing the songs that you sang, which are amazing choices for where the characters are at that time. So.
Yeah, well, it was actually going sort of returning to what I was saying before about these sort of hidden genres in the movie. I felt like maybe there's a musical, also in there, and I mean, I kind of half joked that I reverse engineered the whole movie just to get the two of them to sing those songs, but I did have that idea early on, and company is something Adam and I have talked about a lot. It's something that we love, and I thought, well, how great if we could use these songs as ways to also tell story and also to show character, which is story. And so I kind of had them as markers in my mind that I would hopefully feel like when I got to those points in the movie, I could justify it, and I wouldn't be just like jamming it in, and I've done that before in scripts where I have an idea, I'm going to do a dance number, and then it's like, I get there and it's like, this will never work in this reality. But this story, as I said, kind of was, it gave back a lot as I worked on it, and I felt that we could do it, and it helped that they, of course, are an actor and theater people and director, and it works because it's from the same musical. If you know that, they're two songs that is a kind of connection, but also expressing very different things in very different parts of where they are at the time.
There's someone else in the front, and then we'll go to the next one.
Row by row.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, thank you guys all for being here. So my question is for Adam and Scarlett. I was just wondering if you could talk about how you brought some comedic relief to your roles, or how you balanced the comedy and drama in them.
I mean, I think, life is, it's so dynamic and neither funny or sad. I mean, a lot of sad things are also hilarious, to me anyway, but, I think, and both of the characters, I think because they've had this shared experience for a decade of time and know each other, so, they kind of operate in this, very sort of, there's something very interconnected about them still. They have these kind of roots together. And so they have their familiarity is also, it's touching, but it's also funny and ironic, and they can recognize the hilarity in the worst moments. And I think that's just also a testament to Noah's writing, is that there can be the drama between them, or the life that's happening between them, is also funny and whimsical at times, and light, because it's dynamic like life is. So it'd be, if they didn't notice the irony in this situations that they find themselves in, sometimes it would be just devastating and also just so morose and unnatural, I think. And sometimes we would be doing things and actually didn't realize that they were hilarious, but then found them funny in the moment. Sometimes we would, even if we were fighting one another, just how awful it was so funny, because it was so terrible, couldn't get any worse. So in some ways, you kind of have to laugh at it. And I think that's just how life sort of is sometimes, or all the time.
Yeah, pretty much the same. It's not something that I think I consciously think of oh, this has to be funny. No, if anything, it's just a testament to the writing with what Scarlett is saying, and I find that's more true to life anyway. I mean, we don't live in a genre. It's not all one thing. If anything, it would be comedy, but you know, that's just, it feels more true to me. So it wasn't something we consciously thought of. It's really just what Scarlett and what Ray is saying is, you're armed with this great script, so that does all of the work for you, or most of it, yeah.
Yes. Second row. The microphone on that side, please. Yes, here.
I can just yell.
I'm sure you can.
Hello? Hey, sorry, it's cold in here. I happen to think that we're at our most honest when we're angry, and it's hard to go to those places because it's draining, right? So I was curious as to, did you guys rehearse a lot? How many takes? What was the conditions like on set on those days that you shot those scenes? That's it. Thank you.
You have to redo the whole thing.
Were you referring maybe most specifically to the fight scene they have? Yeah. Well, we rehearsed that scene quite a bit. We rehearsed it both just them we in a rehearsal space, just kind of talking it through, reading it, getting used to the words. And then we rehearsed in the location. This is all before we started shooting, and blocked it out so they would know exactly where they were going. And then we shot it for 2 days. And it was, it's the first in time in my career as a director that I felt affected by what was going on in ways that I hadn't anticipated, and that it was challenging in that way to because we do a lot of takes, and also with a scene like that, you know, momentum is so much a part of it too. So it's not like you don't, when you redo it, you don't jump in and just start yelling. You back it up and you start from the beginning, or you go back through it again, and so it was exhausting, and much more so for them, and they also, I felt, you know, it was also the most gratifying thing I've ever been involved in, really, because of what they gave, and you know, I felt, you know, I was very touched by it at the same time. But we would have to take breaks, walk around the block. We would have to, and it was also so specifically blocked. So like when we get into the close-ups of them, I knew on what lines I was going to cut. So I would be saying, you know, to them, you know, when you say this line, you're lunging forward or you're turning left, you know, and lose yourself entirely, you know, that, you know, that, but it's that kind of, with these actors, I mean, it's that amazing thing where the unconscious and the conscious are going at the same time, that, you know, that when you have it and when it's this fantastic, it's I mean, it's what you hope for as a director.
Call it a rhythm or no?
Would I call it a rhythm? Yeah, I mean, the whole movie is a rhythm. The whole thing is musical in a way too, going back to what, you know, I mean, that's why I think the songs work. But yeah, I mean, it was very, I mean, it's an 11-page scene, I think, or something, and you know, that often they were doing all the way through over and over again. And, you know, because we had it in these wides, you see them very wide in the room, we come in very close, we come back, you know, it was all very technical and very mapped out. And, you know, and then they were, you know, I able to do what they do, and only they can do. But it didn't stop for me then. When I edited, when Jen Lame, my editor, and I were, because we do a lot of takes, so we watched them all again, and we would have to do the same thing. We would watch a bunch of them and then stop and say, let's work on another scene, let's take a break. When we mixed the movie, we had to stop again and say, Chris Garabosio and Jen and I would just say, let's take, because it was so intense. And you're watching them really give what they're giving. I mean, it's not, you can't fake that.
Yeah, like my parents were worse than your characters, and I was an only child, so you nailed it.
And I'm sorry.
We have time for one more question, so I think we were going on that row. There's a microphone behind you, sir. Yeah.
Alan, what was the punchline to your joke?
It's gonna cost you to hear it.
I don't think Noah wants me to tell the punchline to the joke.
Oh, you should.
I should? These people have pencils in their hands. The story apparently, and I didn't know what the joke was. Noah explained it to me when we showed the movie at Telluride a couple of weeks ago. But apparently the joke goes, the woman is at her hairdresser's and mentions she's going on a trip to Europe, and the hairdresser says, oh, where are you going to go? She says, well, we're going to go to Rome. Oh, Rome, well, I don't know, Rome. So where are you staying? Staying at the Hassler Hotel. Hassler Hotel? No, they're rebuilding it. Don't stay there, that's terrible. What are you going to do there? She said, well, we'll go to the Vatican. Maybe we'll look. No, the Vatican, it's crowded, tourist, forget it. Don't go there, forget it. So she goes to Rome, she comes back, and the hairdresser says, how was it? She says, it was a great trip, it was wonderful. She said, how was the Vatican? It was wonderful, we happened to meet the Pope. You met the Pope? Yeah, and he spoke to me. What did he say to you? He said, where'd you get that fucking haircut? He's a regular guy, But I just want to say about Noah, it occurred to me while we were talking, and we talk about the script, and we talk about how the actors came up with such brilliant performances. And watching Noah work, I really think an important part of it is his respect for the people he's working with. You don't get the impression that he has some secret way that he wants you to do, or that he doesn't think much of you, but somehow he'll make it work in the editing room. You get that feeling from some people. I worked with a director once who was wedded to the video monitor and the camera, and way at the other side of a big sound stage. Noah's right there with you as you're acting. He's part of the performance through his sympathetic nature. But this guy was at the other end of the room, and he would scream out to me directions between takes, like he'd scream across the soundstage, "More subtlety!" You know what I mean?
Thank you so much for that delightful note to finish it.
Thank you.